I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got a really fascinating gentleman to introduce you to tonight. His Worship, Bill Fatsis. He is the retired Justice of the Peace, Toronto Region, was born in Greece in 1948 during Greece's civil war, and he's written a book that starts with his life in Greece and his immigration to Canada and his whole career, which was really quite a fascinating career. And I think we're going to hear a little bit about it. He ran in a federal by-election in 1982. He ran to become a member of parliament, drew really wide media attention because he defeated a well-known, high-profile opponent from the world of media and Canadian establishment, the co-owner at the time of the Toronto Sun newspaper. He's written a really interesting book, and I think we're going to chat a little bit about his book. And the book is Not Looking for Trouble. I think he was looking for trouble. And next week, he's actually going to be broadcasting in a theater a incredibly interesting movie, a two-part film. He is the president and CEO of Greca TV. Bill Fatsis, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Brian, for hosting me today. It's a real honor to be part of an array of very important people that you have interviewed over the years. So I'm really honored, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Well, I got to tell you, I've never gotten somebody that sent me a book that's got 34 chapters in it. It's an impressive book with 34 chapters, but let's come back to the book in a minute. Let's talk about this film. What's the film about, and when are you showing it, sir?
Next week on Tuesday, the 19th of May, and the second part of the movie is on the Wednesday, the 20th of May. Oh, it's a dramatized documentary film of the most famous Greek composer that we had in Greece that died recently, and that's Mikis Theodorakis. Now, Mikis Theodorakis, many people don't know really his name, but most people worldwide will know him from the music of Zorba the Greek. So he became famous that way, and people recognize him. He had a very, very tumultuous life because he was a leftist that initially he fought the Germans, the Hitler's troops in Greece, and then in the Civil War, he was on the right side of things. But in those days, anybody who was not a right-wing citizen ended up in torture and exiles. And he went through that several times. And during the dictatorship in Greece, he was imprisoned, and he was lucky to be freed only with international interventions of people like Harry Belafonte and other very, very known international figures. And he was finally exiled to France in 1970. Then he came back to Greece in 1974. He was elected 4 periods as an elected politician. He was a patriot. And of course, his music is the one that sets him really apart from everybody else. Now, many people will not know that in addition to Zorba the Greek, which is a movie back in 1964, he wrote the score of Zet and, believe it or not, Serpico with Al Pacino in 1973. He was a three-time BAFTA nominee, winning for Zet for the score in Serpico. He earned Grammy nominations. Furthermore, for the score to Zorba the Greek with its song Zorba's Dance, he was nominated for a Golden Globe. So he's a very, very important composer and musician that we're all proud of. And I thought that this documentary, dramatized documentary, two-part, it's a good thing to present to the community, and that's what I'm doing.
Excellent. And why two parts?
Initially, by the way, I have invited the director and producer of this movie who will be present and will make a very short introduction prior to the projection of the movie. It was as an 8-hour series in a very, very important commercial channel, TV channel in Greece. So he condensed those parts, and then after the composer died, he uses very prominent Greek actors, accomplished Greek actors that play part of his life. But in this movie, especially in the first one, Mikis Theodorakis himself narrates parts of his life.
Sounds like a fascinating gentleman and an excellent
Yes.
film. If people are interested, how do they get tickets? Where is it at? What time is it on?
Well, the simple way to do it is go to my website, which is Greca TV. That's GRECA.ca. And there's a poster of the event. You just click and then it goes to the ticketing company, Imperia.ca.
Supposedly, the most famous, well-known Greek song is Zorba's Dance.
Yes.
And so that's interesting that it appeared, as you said, in the 1964 Hollywood movie Zorba the Greek, and it remains the best-known Greek song of all time.
Yes, and believe it or not, many people that follow classical music, he wrote fantastic classical pieces, and he performed at Carnegie Hall in Munich, La Scala. His classical compositions are very, very well received, and many people worldwide that follow classical music know him from that.
There's supposedly a Zorba dance that's also
Yes.
quite significant, where the dancers drag their feet. Can you explain that?
Well, I don't know if it's dragging, but certainly they touch each other's hands in a circle, and in the beat of Zorba the Greek, the dance, they lift the left and the right foot, which is really traditional. A Mediterranean type of thing. Israel and other Arab countries in the Asia Minor have similar type of dances.
He also composed something I understand called the Malthouse Trilogy, which is known as the Ballad of Mauthausen, which has been described as the most beautiful musical work ever written about the Holocaust.
Yes, absolutely. He's very well recognized in the Jewish communities worldwide. And people that do understand this type of classical music, they described it and they ranked it as the best ever written about the Holocaust.
And Zorba was not a fictional character, he's a real life character.
He's a very real life character. Alexis Zorbas was a friend of the most famous modern Greek author, Nikos Kazantzakis, who was nominated 3 times for Nobel Prize for Literature. He met the real Zorba, and while on one side, you have a very educated person, a lawyer, a writer, educated in France and everywhere. And on the other hand, you have this real life, simple person called Alexis Zorbas, who helps this person of Greek heritage that comes from London, born in London, England, portrayed in a movie by the famous actor Alan Bates. And of course, the role of Zorba was Anthony Quinn. That played the role of Zorba the Greek. and you see the interchange of this beautiful merging of an educated person that knows very little about everyday life. And on the other hand, you have an illiterate person that teaches the real life ways to the educated person. It's a beautiful movie.
And I'm going to get pronounce the name wrong. I apologize, but Mikis Theodorakis.
You said it perfectly, Brian.
Oh, thank you. Was imprisoned and tortured and exiled multiple times. Is that true?
Yes, yes, absolutely. At
Tell me
one
about
time,
that.
he was
First
buried
time during World
alive.
War II?
Yes, and he was buried alive in one of the islands that he was exiled.
And then so it was three times. Once in World War II, once in the 50s, and then again in the 1960s.
Yes, yes,
Because of his music. He was banned by a junta
absolutely.
because
Yes,
of his music.
yes, because of his music, they thought it's too revolutionary. It promotes too much of democracy, which was not the liking of the dictators then, the junta.
I'm not sure if he was involved in the script, but I love this line from the movie Zorba. Zorba the Greek says, "Life is trouble, only death is not. To be
Yes.
alive is to undo your belt and look for trouble."
Yes, that's Nikos Kazantzakis. That's the wonderful writer that has written several books. He's interpreted in over 150 languages all his works. Nikos Kazantzakis, as I said, is the most modern author that we ever had, and he's the one that wrote the text of the movie. Of course, it comes out of the book.
Well, it sounds like a fascinating movie, and it's on next Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yes,
And you can get information about tickets at Greca TV or greca.ca.
yes.
Really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the film.
Well, I hope to
We're going
see
to
you
take a
there, Brian. I hope to see you because it's at a beautiful theater, at the PC Hall Theater, the Chinese Cultural Center, which is at the intersection, close to the intersection of Shepherd and Highway 48 or Markham Road as we know it.
Excellent. Not on the Danforth. It should be on the Danforth. Anyway, that's good. We're going to take a break and come back in just 2 minutes with our guest, Bill Fatsis. And we're going to talk about him and his career and the book that he's written about not looking for any trouble. Sounds interesting. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. It's a real honor for me tonight to be chatting with Bill Fatsis, His Worship, Bill Fatsis. Your first name is actually Vasilias?
Vasilius, yes.
Vasilias,
Vasilius
but
Fatsis.
you shortened it to Bill.
Well, when I was at U of T, that's where I graduated from. A lot of my professors couldn't pronounce it, and they kept saying "va who," and I said, "Call me Bill," which is really the equivalent in French is Basile, William in English or Basil. And therefore, I ended up being known as Bill. But legally, I still retain the Vasilius.
You've got really quite an impressive career. Let me tell everyone a little bit about you, if I could. After the Civil War, you were born during Greece's Civil War, but after finishing high school, you admitted to law school in Greece, and then in 1966, you immigrated to Canada. You considered being a pioneer in Canada for being one of the first immigrants to be appointed as an assistant to a cabinet minister. In the federal by-election of 1982, you ran as a member of parliament and drew really wide media attention because you defeated for nomination a high-profile opponent from the world of media and Canadian establishment, the co-owner of the Toronto Sun newspaper at the time, Peter Worthington. Your nomination meeting was described at the time as the largest nomination meeting in political history. Prior to your appointment to the bench, where you served as Justice of the Peace in the Toronto region, you were administrative and legal assistants to the Ontario Minister of Labour, member of the Canada's Immigration Appeal and Refugee Board, member of Ontario's Health Professions Review and Board, board member of several Greek Canadian community organizations, a journalist in Greek Canadian electronic and print media, and the past executive director of the Ethnic Press Council of Canada. Wow, quite the career. And then to top it all off, you ended up writing a book that has been called Not Looking for Trouble. So, sir, tell me, why were you not looking for trouble?
I'll tell you why. I had become famous during that campaign because of Peter Worthington. He was very well known in the established Canadian community. And he wrote his memoirs in 1979, calling it Looking for Trouble. Now, I thought it's a good opportunity for me to say, I'm not looking for trouble. So that's how the title came about.
Quite the story. You've got 34 chapters, and they start with your life in Greece and your immigration to Canada. Tell me a little bit about that, if you could.
Well, during the Civil War, of course, it's a war of Greek against another Greek. You know, the left wing of politics against the right wing politics, so they ended up killing each other. And I was born right in the middle of that civil war. Actually, I was born in a bunker, army bunker, because the bombardment of the British airplanes at the time, had killed several children. And my mother, when the sirens came on, she went to an army bunker, and that's where I was born. And of course, during the Civil War, my father was killed. My mother had 5 children to raise. She was only 33 years old, and she managed to feed us by really washing by hand all the laundry of the army, of the local army, to earn enough money for our food. And she managed to put us through school. It was a very, very difficult time because at that time many families registered their children to go outside Greece not to be killed, and through the Red Cross they ended up going. Initially, they were taken by the communist forces or the partisans to several countries. My 3 siblings ended up in Romania and one in Czechoslovakia. My sister was in Czechoslovakia, whom I met for the first time in my wedding in Canada. And my other 3 siblings came back to Greece in 1954 after the Red Cross interfered and the government of the day made a deal, so they came back. And that's when I met the rest of my siblings because when they left, I was not born yet.
Quite the story.
And then I went to high school. I went to law school in Thessaloniki in the northern part of Greece, part of Macedonia. And then I came here to Toronto in 1966. And by accident, in a way,
The
because
chapter title in your book is The Long Road to the Great White North. Why was it such a long road, sir?
in those days we all came by those big steamers, the passenger ships, and we all ended up at Pier 21 in Halifax. It took us 9 days to be in the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean, and that's where I ended up coming there. And then from there, 2 days by train all the way to Toronto's railway station.
You learned English before you came?
Very little. I learned my English here. I still don't speak it, but I'm trying.
I think you speak it fine. Very well. Obviously, and your media career is incredible. Tell me about soccer. You say soccer was important in your life.
Yes, when I was in high school, I played goalie as a professional at the professional second division, and when I came to Canada, I played for the National Soccer League with the Hellas team, which was the Greek team, and of course at U of T, I played for the University Blues.
Oh, really? Fantastic. That must have been a fun experience.
Yes, it was.
You then sponsored your mother and your siblings to come to Canada?
Yes, my brother and I, we sponsored the rest of the family, and we're all here. And my mother's dream was fulfilled before she died to have all her children together here in Canada, and she lived up to be 102.
Fantastic. 102. What a great
Yeah.
life. You talk about the Greek Yanta. Was there a Greek group that you had problems with here in Canada?
Uh, you see the junta or the colonels, the dictators that took over, the army took over in 1967, April the 21st. Those 7 years were very difficult for Greece. And when I came here, there were, of course, some groups here in Canada that they loved the dictators. They were the minority, but as usual, these people are the vocal ones. And that prompted me. At the time, I was the president at U of T, of the Hellenic University Society, the Greek Student Association at U of T. But then during the dictatorship, when Andreas Papandreou, who became the first socialist prime minister in Greece after he came from the United States to establish the chair, the economics chair at York University, I got to know him then. And then we formed Students for a Free Greece, and I became the president of that as well. And our goal was to fight the dictators, create problems for them. So that's why I devoted a chapter in my experience fighting the junta.
You've got a whole chapter on becoming an activist against the Greek
Yes,
junta. What did
yes.
you do in that fight, sir?
Well, we organized demonstrations either in front of City Hall or a huge one when Andreas Papandreou formed the Liberation Front to topple the dictatorship at the old indoor varsity arena. That over 5,000 people turn out in that one. So, and writing articles in the newspapers, and I presume that's why Peter Worthington never liked me from then, because as president of the the Students for a Free Greece at U of T, I had written quite a few letters to the editor because he was supporting the junta.
Oh, why was he supporting the junta?
Yeah, because he thought Greeks are politically mature, as he had written. I still remember his words in that article. And the best thing for Greece was for the army to take over. Of course, he was a known anti-communist. There were reports that what was that right-wing group in the States, the Mooners, and of course he never liked anything that had the shadow of a pink. Never mind communist. So we're at opposite views, political views at the time, and even during the campaign. I've been a progressive conservative by nature all my life, and I ran with the progressive conservatives federally in that nomination as he did, and nobody believed that I won. And of course, front page in the Sun was it went to the Greeks. And he had written an article in his column that if a Greek wins in the area, somehow, the society will be at risk.
In Toronto Danforth? That's
Yes,
Greek town, isn't it?
yes, it was 10%. It was Greek town, but that was not enough to win, really. When he came and actually the reports that he influenced how he did or his people did, another Greek to come into the race and split the Greek vote. And hoping that way, he'll win, but it didn't work out for him and I won.
You must have been extremely popular and undoubtedly still are. You've got a whole chapter associated with the Macedonian issue. Tell me what the Macedonian issue was, sir.
That's a very difficult issue. Of course, Macedonia. Anybody who reads history from ancient times will know that Alexander the Great united all the Greeks against the Persians. He participated in the ancient Olympics that only Greek citizens could participate. His father united all the city states at the time in ancient Greece. Every kingdom, every area of Greece had a king, and it was the known as the city state. The Athenians, for example, were fighting the Spartans for 30 years. The Corinthians, the same thing, and so forth and so on. So, but now, when Tito became the communist leader in Yugoslavia, and they had the International Communist Convention in Moscow, they wanted a passage in the Aegean Sea. And what they did, well, Tito named the southern part of Yugoslavia as the Republic of Macedonia. And after that, the communist regime in Bulgaria, they named their western part of Bulgaria as Macedonia, that is part of Macedonia. And suddenly we have three Macedonians, the Greek part, the Yugoslav part, and the Bulgarian part. Now, all these parts during the Ottoman Empire, all the way up to 1912, they're fighting for their independence. But that's where politics come. And then in the modern times, we have what is known now as North Macedonia. We still call it the regime of Skopje. But in any event, it's a political issue. It's very divisive. I became the president of the Pan-Macedonian Association of Canada. I've written a book about the truth of Macedonia, and I've studied the issue quite a bit. I respect everybody's view, and that was as president of the Pan-Macedonian Association. I never consider those that consider themselves only Macedonians and not Greeks. Well, we have freedom in Canada. Were never militant, so long as they didn't steal our history. And that's what they're doing with Alexander the Great and the rest. So I thought a chapter on this issue, not to disseminate any propaganda, but to state historical facts, was important, and it was part of my life. So that's why I devoted a chapter for that.
Fascinating. And, this book has gotten some incredible accolades. Let me read one if I could. Bill Fatsis and his family have faced adversity that would seem incredible to most people, surviving life and death situations. His personal story is one that I encouraged him to share. The lesson that it teaches is that it's possible to aspire and achieve if you are willing to work hard with integrity and have faith in yourself. And that's from the Honorable David Tabucci. Sounds like a fascinating book. I look forward to reading it, sir. We're going to take a break from some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Bill Fatsis talking about his film, talking about his book, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about his political life and his political experience when we come back in 2 minutes. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio. It's a real pleasure of mine tonight to be chatting with Bill Fatsis. He's got this incredibly interesting career, immigrating to Canada in 1966, becoming a soccer star at the University of Toronto, becoming a very activist within the Greek community, and working against the Greek junta at the time, and the dictators that were running Greece. He's written about the Macedonian issue, and then he got involved in politics. You started, I understand, by working in the Bill Davis government, and then you wanted to run for a nomination, get active in politics yourself. Tell us a little bit about the story. This was reputed to be the most attended nomination meeting of all time in Toronto Danforth. Is that correct?
Yes. I was, I believe, the first immigrant to be hired as an assistant to a cabinet minister, not only in Ontario, but I believe in Canada. And I was lucky enough to be hired by a wonderful politician and my political mentor, Dr. Bob Elgee, who was one of the top neurosurgeons in Canada, medical staff director at the Scarborough Hospital. And also he had a law degree, a very special person that gave me the opportunity of my life. So I worked with him for about 7, 8 years in the Bill Davis government. And he's the reason why I decided to become a federal candidate. And the reason was very simple. Bob Ray decided to resign his seat from the federal government and run for leader of the Ontario NDP and eventually becoming a premier. So there was a by-election in Broadview Greenwood, which is called now Toronto Danforth. So Bob Elgee called me one day and he says, Bill, I think it's a great opportunity for you to run there. There's a good basis of Greek vote in the area. But most importantly, I know how much you care about multicultural rights and human rights. Why don't you run? And my immediate answer was, we called him Dr. Bob. I said, Dr. Bob, no, thank you. I live the politician's life with you for almost 7, 8 years now. I don't want it. Definitely, I don't want to run because I'm with politics from 7 a.m. because I have to listen to Peter Zosky, so I know what topics pertain to our ministry. He was then the Minister of Labor. And then go and prepare your question period book. And then after 5 or 6, I have to escort you, whether you're speaking in Hamilton to the Steelworkers Union or anywhere. So no, thank you. I'm not running. He got angry at me. He says it was a Friday. He says, I want you to think it over because if you're not prepared to put your money where your mouth is, I don't want to hear anything trying to lobby me all the time, multicultural, minority rights, everything. You got to be able to be involved in politics if you really believe in what you're advocating to me every single day. So I agonized for the whole weekend, whether I should do it or not. I felt guilty. And eventually he convinced me by saying, I'll give you a 2 weeks paid vacation. If you don't win the nomination, you come back. Where you're going to find an opportunity like that? Nobody had such an opportunity. Your job will be waiting here for you if you don't win. And in those days, you'll recall that nominations were very simple, 100 people or 80 at a church basement somewhere, mostly white hair gentlemen and ladies. That's how nominations were. That's how his was. And I participated in that, and I knew. So I thought, okay, I'll try. And in the beginning, Brian, I didn't register one single Greek vote for my nomination because I wanted to prove in action that we should represent all the people, not only our own community. But then again, I had very nice opponents. Ron Ritchie, who was a cabinet minister during the Joe Clark government, and then he became the vice president of ESO Canada. Very credible candidate, was one of my opponents for the nomination. Peter Hordo, he was a multimillionaire with casino, and he owned the Piercy House on Blue Street and the north part, the Embassy Tavern and so forth, all those buildings all the way from Bay Street to Avenue Road. He was one of the opponents. He canvassed with his Rolls Royce, believe it or not, on the Danforth. And there was another University of Toronto, very nice gentleman from originally from Newfoundland. Anyway, we're 5 candidates at the moment until Peter Worthington. I declared my candidacy on the 2nd of June, 1982. The nomination was set for 18th of June. So that's why I decided. I said, okay, that's 2 weeks. I can give it a try. But when Peter Worthington comes into the race, every member of the local PC association in Bravio Greenwood, in that riding, they're all in support of him. So they postponed it to the 5th of July to give him time to catch up with us. But everybody then started writing, including columns in his own paper, that the man to beat is Bill Fatsis. And he hadn't caught up in memberships. I remember by 5th of July, I had registered about 450, and only 20 were Greeks. And then they still extended it to the 5th of August. And in addition, there is a Greek coming now to break the Greek vote in the area. So that's when I really got angry. And I thought, this is not a fair ball. I went for 2 weeks vacation. I ended up until 9th of September. That's when our nomination was.
It got extended 3 times. First step from June to July, then to August, then to September.
And then September the 9th.
People that complain about nomination games are right.
Exactly. So, I was exhausted, financially exhausted as well. Thank God for the Greek community. They had two fundraisers. They raised $75,000 for my campaign then. And then we didn't have, because all the candidates had registered 10,000 members. It was the biggest nominating convention in Canadian political history. So there was no venue in the area in East York or anywhere. So the venue was the Coliseum at the CNE. That's where our nomination happened. And that's when I got afraid that I'm not going to win, because Peter Worden had hired three or four, no, 13 TTC buses to take his supporters from the Pape subway all the way to the Coliseum on September the 9th, which was a Thursday night. I knew I had 300 volunteers, that they had cars, but how can you transport close to 3,000 voters by 300 cars? So I knew that we didn't have the money to hire buses. So I knew we were going to lose at that point, except that I had a very, very Trojan horse Trojan horse mentality Greek assistant campaign manager, who managed, without telling me anything, because I would have never allowed him to do that. He had implanted in Peter Worthington's campaign a Greek Canadian who pretended that he's a supporter of Peter Worthington, and he had the information that Peter Worthington's supporters would have a W, a white W, against a background circle blue, and anybody wearing that would board, free of course, at the TTC buses at the subway station on Pape. So he printed W's, and many of my supporters ended up with his buses. Now that's unethical. I found out, and I was furious after the campaign. That's when he disclosed it to me. So that's a factor in favor. The other first was that my campaign, again, I had no idea until the last moment, they hired a big blimp, huge one, that kids could ride. And then it would end up at the gate, at the Princess Gate at CNE, saying, "Vote for Bill Fatsis tonight." These were first in Canadian politics. So I won on the second ballot after 12:30, after midnight, from 9. So it was a very interesting campaign. Now, your synonym and my friend at the time, David Crombie, who was the mayor previously, and he was very popular with the multicultural communities, he was the nominator at that convention at the CNE. And when I found out that he was going to nominate him, at the time he was a federal elected PC member of parliament. And I called David, I said, "David, I don't think you should do that. Don't nominate Peter Worthington, because he's using you. Do you think that if I ask Bob Elgie to nominate me, he would do it or not?" He says, "I know he would do it. No questions asked, Bill. He adores you. Bob Elgie adores you." I said, "Well, he doesn't do it because I don't let him do it. Because he's a politician, acting cabinet minister in the PC party of Ontario, and he shouldn't take any parts. We're all candidates of all the same party. So he shouldn't take advantage of you, but he's using you. That's why he called you, to steal the multicultural vote. And I'm not going to allow you, David. I'm going to speak against you at that nomination." He says, "Bill, do whatever you want to win. I respect you, that I cannot go back." He's been good. He supported me in my campaigns. And of course, his campaign manager, David Crombie, for mayor, was Peter Worthington's campaign manager. So that's how it worked. And I did attack him in my speech. And I guess it worked in my favor, And then I won by 69 votes that night.
By 69 votes. Every
Yes.
vote counts.
Yes, and my opponents already were campaigning for the by-election, was October the 12th. Like the NDP candidate, Lynn MacDonald, who eventually won, was campaigning. David O'Connor for the Liberals was campaigning for 6 weeks, and I had only 2.5 or 3 from the 9th of September to the 12th to campaign to beat my opponents. And Decima polls, Alan Gregg at the time, he was doing all the polls for the PC Party of Canada. He was showing that I'm 15% ahead of everybody against my opponents. I was eschewing to win that race in the by-election. But then when Peter Worthington never accepted his defeat, he resigned the party and ran as an independent against me in the same area. So he and I split the vote, although we won together more than 6,000 votes, more than the NDP winner. Of course, we both lost, and the NDP won in the area.
God, what a story. Incredible. So
So
why
that's
didn't you
another
run again?
president, by the way. Sorry for interrupting you. That's another president that still exists in Canadian political history. Nobody that has lost a nomination did what Peter Worthington did, but they all worked for the winner. So this is a precedent as well, which is actually included in the textbooks teaching political science at U of T and everywhere as a precedent.
Don't run against the winner if it's the opposite of Lincoln's team of rivals, that's for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So why didn't you run again, sir?
The reason I did not, I was at the time then we had Brian Mulroney as the leader. And so I was asked by his director here in Ontario to run again in the same area. I did meet with them and I explained my reasons why I should not run because I was convinced that Peter Worthington will do it again. And I said, it's not fair. And I knew the polls that are so favorable and the results show it. I mean, everywhere, everybody won except 2 seats, one in Newfoundland, one in Broadview Greenwood, when Peter Worthington was allowed, after I decided not to run, to come back. Brian Mulroney allowed him to come back into the PC party. He ran, and he was one of the two that lost nationally. And I thought there's divine justice.
Well, we sort of intersected a few times, sir. So my second cousin is Bob Nixon, who was leader of the Liberal Party during most of the time that you were working in the Bill
Wonderful
Davis
fellow.
government. And in 1982, I ran David Peterson's leadership campaign, or at least the youth section of that campaign. And then I guess after you, for quite a while, I campaigned in Toronto Danforth. For Broadview Greenwood, Broadview Danforth, for Dennis Mills.
Dennis
So
Mills.
I knew you're riding well.
If you allow me, I'll say a very short story for all those three that you mentioned. Dennis Mills came and saw me. He says, Bill, I want you to help me here in the Danforth. You're very popular. And knowing what Peter Worthington did to you, I think he deserves this. And I like Dennis very much. I knew him in the area. And I said, Dennis, my conscience does not allow me to do that. But I can guarantee you, I'm not going to lift a finger to support him. But I cannot campaign for you. And he understood it. We were friends and we still remain friends. Now, with Bob Nixon liked so much Bob Elgee, they became very good friends. And later on, when I was the president of the Canadian Hellenic Congress, we went to lobby him. He was, of course, the head of the atomic energy at the time in Ottawa. And I met him because we were protesting the nuclear heads to Turkey at the time as Greeks. And we went to meet Bob Nixon at the time. And of course, you named Peterson. Peterson respected my minister so much that he appointed him to be the chairman of the Workers' Compensation Board at the time.
Politics is an interesting game. Sometimes you
Yes.
can make friends, and sometimes even people that are in the same team become enemies. It's
Yes.
amazing. We're going to take a final break and come back with some concluding comments, maybe a little bit about multiculturalism when we come back in 2 minutes. Stay with us, everyone. Back in two. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. What a fascinating conversation with Bill Fatsis. Incredible career, sir, in politics, and as a member of the Justice Department, Justice of the Peace. Very involved in Greek society and Canadian society. What a pleasure to have you on tonight. One of your chapters is about multiculturalism. Our Prime Minister, our current Prime Minister, very recently said, unity is not uniformity. What do you think? Is multiculturalism good for Canada or bad for Canada? Should we all assimilate and have the melting pot like the United States?
I haven't changed my views on the policy of multiculturalism, except that I think it has changed itself very much from 1982 when I defended that policy to what it is today. Now, when I ran Brian, that's in 1982. That's when we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms come into effect. And of course, in that charter, we see in section 27 of the charter saying that anything interpreted about minorities should be consistent with the preservation and enhancement of the multicultural heritage of Canadians, which is wonderful. And of course, we have Section 15, Sub 1, that also talks about the fairness and the equality of all under the law, regardless of faith, race, or ethnicity. So I'm still for that, except that now we have the multicultural community is represented in the decision-making tables. It's not like when I was a pioneer. And when I ran, there were only so-called ethnic, although Charles Katia came to Canada when he was 40 years old. And Volpe, again, who was born here, they were the talking minority cabinet ministers and politicians. Now it's different. You see in the same area candidates for all major parties running from the same ethnicity.
Yeah.
So, and we have leaders in politics. We have leaders in executive offices running big corporations in Canada, political parties, heads of political parties nationally. So it has changed. So the needs are the same, not the same. And of course, some discrimination still exists, but it happens for socioeconomic reasons and others that we face. Don't forget that in those times, Brian, we had the immigration mainly coming from Europe, and we had the Judeo-Christian tradition, which Western societies had evolved over the years, and we had learned from our mistakes. And now suddenly we have a lot of Asian Muslims. We have the refugees from war-torn countries nowadays. So the unknown always scarce. That's where I think multiculturalism must change. So for the established minority groups now, not to assimilate, still to integrate and retain the mosaic, the Canadian mosaic, but in a way that we have a mixture of the best that we have from our own cultures, where we come from, preserve those cultures, but mix them with the Canadian culture, the native culture. Everything, a mixture of both is where multiculturalism in daily living, in practice, must involve. Not in books, not in policies, because I believe even as a policy, as a government policy or law, if that is not observed, I think the living reality of intercultural, inter-community communication is the road to go in the future, because that's the new heritage. The Canadian heritage is what it is. We have over 30% of citizens in Canada not born in Canada. And so we have over 200 languages spoken in Canada. So we have a lot of pockets, very influential pockets of established communities. But if they isolate themselves and ghettoize themselves, the Greeks separately, the Polish separately, or whatever,
We should
doesn't
do
work.
we should do a whole show on this. This is fascinating, sir. Let's have you back and talk about multiculturalism and what we need to do. But quickly remind us all about this film. What's the topic? What's the film title? And how do people get information?
Okay, the film, it's a two-part film on the 19th and 20th of May. It's a dramatized documentary of the famous Greek composer Mikis Theodorakis, and it's at the PC Hall Theater, which is at 5183 Shepherd Avenue and Highway 48. And for tickets, you go to Greca TV. .ca, GRE for Greece, by the way, CA for Canada, Greca TV, and in Latin it means Greek, grecatv.ca. Click on the poster and it brings you directly to choose your seat and to be sent your digital tickets.
Bill Fatsis, thank you so much. What a fascinating career you've had. I think your story of leaving Greece, the long road to coming to the Great White North, your career in politics, your fight for the by-election with Peter Worthington is fascinating reading. And then you've had an incredible career since then in the legal community as well as in the Greek community. And so thank you for your contribution to Canada,
Thank
sir.
you, Brian,
It's been
for
a
the
real pleasure
opportunity.
chatting with you.
The pleasure was all mine. I really thank you.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online, even from Greece, I guess, at saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videos go up on my website, briancrombie.com, and social media, and my YouTube channel as soon as the radio show goes to air. Remember this film, grecatv.ca, next Tuesday and Wednesday. If you're interested in just a fascinating recording artist and composer, classical music. The music for, what was the film?
Zorba the Greek.
Zorba the Greek and Zorba the Dance. And that great line about if you're looking for trouble, undo your belt and away you go. Sounds fun. See you next week, sir. All the best, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.